प्रेजेंटेड बाय ईबिक्स कैश। हर खुशी के लिए काफी है।
Hello and welcome. You're with us here on Business Today. I'm Abha Bakaya. Here are the headlines tonight. Market snaps 4-day rally amid Omicron woes and also weak global cues. Nifty below 17,750. Sensex falls 621 points. CII President, in an exclusive conversation with Business Today TV, says he's confident of an 8.5% growth next year. But can the spread of Omicron variant derail the recovery?
If we continue with this pace of recovery and the CII forecast for next year is 8.5% growth, then we should be on target for 4.5% fiscal deficit in the next few years.
Lockdown fear grips small businesses all over the country. Owners say more COVID restrictions could down their shutters. Lakhs of jobs on the line. Reliance Industries raises $4 billion in US dollar bonds. It's the largest ever foreign currency bond issuance from India. Indians to get next-gen e-passports soon. MEA Secretary says digital passports to be based on biometrics and will be accepted everywhere. Markets snapped their 4-day rally amid Omicron woes and also weak global cues. The benchmarks drifted lower in Thursday trade amid weak global cues and rising Omicron cases in the country. The Nifty 50 index ended down 179 points at 17,746. The Sensex ending the session down 621 points at 59,602. Broader markets did outperform benchmarks. The BSE mid-cap ending just marginally lower. The small-cap index closed in the green. Top gainers today, UPL up 2.2%, IndusInd Bank up 1.8%, Bajaj Auto, Bharti Airtel and Maruti making up that list. Top laggards on the Nifty, JSW Steel, Ultratech, Shree Cement and Tech Mahindra down 2.5%, Adani Ports down 2.1%. Among sectors, banking, IT, infra were some that witnessed the maximum profit booking post a good rally seen in the last 3 trading sessions, while auto index remained firm in today's session. With restrictions and weekend curfews being imposed in response to the spread of the Omicron variant, small businesses across the country are fearing the worst. Cinemas, gyms, health centers have all been ordered shut by many states, and the curbs threaten to hit revenues of many other small businesses. This even as these small firms were hoping for a recovery from earlier lockdowns and business disruption.
31-year-old Utpal is an artisan in the gems and jewellery industry. Originally from West Bengal, he has been working in Jaipur for over 10 years. But the last 2 years have been extremely tough on him. Lockdowns had him sit idle at home for months.
पैसे वाला लॉकडाउन नहीं लगना चाहिए। अभी जैसे कारफो 8 बजे के बाद या 10 बजे ऐसे टाइम फिक्स करना चाहिए। जैसे सुबह से शाम को 7-8 बजे तक खुला रहना चाहिए। उसके बाद मार्केट बंद करिए, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है। काम के टाइम काम ही रहना चाहिए। सरकार से यही अनुरोध है।
The gems and jewellery industry, which employs lakhs in Jaipur and Surat, is already facing an exodus of workers. Rumours are rife of an impending lockdown, and workers, many from other states, are headed home. It is estimated that jewellery industry in Rajasthan suffered losses of 300 crore rupees in the previous lockdowns. Business owners fear a repeat this year.
People had started coming back and we were actually quite on to the normal stage. But probably now with the third stage coming in, with the third wave coming in, it's going to be really difficult for all of us.
इस फेस में नहीं लग रहा है कि लॉकडाउन आएगा और पिछला जो 2-2.5 महीना गया है वो वेडिंग सीजन के हिसाब से काफ़ी अच्छा गया और आगे देखते हुए अभी भी हमको ऐसा ही लग रहा है कि बहुत ज़्यादा फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा और व्यापार रूटीन से चलता रहेगा.
Many states have already imposed night and weekend curfew. and various other curbs on public events and outdoor activities. In Delhi, cinemas and gyms have been ordered to be shut down, and curfew has been announced that will remain in place from Friday night to Monday morning, starting this weekend. Gym owners have appealed to the government for relaxation.
बिल की भी मार पड़ रही है, किराए की भी मार पड़ रही है, स्टाफ की सैलरीज की भी मार पड़ रही है, और अब हमें यहाँ पे आके देख के लग रहा है कि इससे बेटर था कि हम शराब का काम कर लेते, हम बार खोल लेते, हम कोई ठेका खोल लेते, तो वो बेटर था, क्योंकि सरकार सिर्फ उन चीज़ों के बारे में सोच रही है जो इम्यूनिटी की बात करते हैं, जो अच्छी सेहत की बात करते हैं, उन चीज़ों को सबसे पहले बंद कर दिया था.
An online poll by Business Today clearly shows respondents against a lockdown, even at the expense of their health. Their biggest concern, a lockdown will hit their finances. For small business owners who were just about getting back on their feet after the crippling impact of earlier lockdowns, the spread of Omicron can pose to be a body blow. In turn, this would put pressure on the state and central government to respond with a set of economic measures should the situation worsen. Bureau Report, Business Today Television.
All eyes are now on Budget 2022. With COVID cases on the rise again, what will be the focus area for the government? Will the Aam Aadmi get some relief when it comes to income tax? How will the government provide the much needed booster dose to the economy? So what are some of the recommendations of top industry body CII? CII President TV Narendran was in conversation with BTTV's managing editor Siddharth Zarabi. Listen in.
In response to a Business Today survey asking people's opinion on the feasibility and need of lockdowns to prevent the spread of the virus, an overwhelming majority of the responses said that there should be no lockdown because it will lead to significant economic pain. Where do you yourself stand on this matter?
Thanks, Siddharth, for having me on the show. Yes, the concern that you shared is a real concern. The spread of Omicron has been rapid, but I think it's been milder than wave 2. So to that extent, people are not worrying as much as they did when wave 2 was spreading. There is certainly a concern on livelihoods. So if people feel that the risk to lives are less, they want to make sure that the livelihoods are not impacted. Because after 2 waves of COVID, a lot of livelihoods have been impacted, which is reflecting in a bit of fragility in the consumption. So I think it's not surprising that people don't want the lockdowns that they've seen, particularly in wave 1 and sometimes in wave 2. I also think industry is better prepared today to deal with it. Government is also more experienced, both at the central and the state level. And there's better coordination, or there can be better coordination between the central, state and the governments and the industry to make sure that the economic impact of COVID wave 3 is not as significant. As we saw in wave 2 also, the economic impact was not as significant as wave 1. So if this is a concern, we also as citizens have to exercise restraint and avoid unnecessary risks to ourselves and to our families, and help the government to take care of COVID with the minimum lockdowns that are required.
We saw in the first wave and then the second wave the disproportionate impact on smaller businesses, the service sector. We are now seeing fresh restrictions which vary from state to state on small businesses, the health business, for example, in terms of the gyms and other restrictions, creeping curbs, weekend curfews. Is there a way to deal with this? Should the respective state governments who put in these curbs also at the same time announce some support measures for those sections of industry? You know, large companies like the one that you represent have the wherewithal. But for smaller businesses which barely survive and are on the low margin side, why shouldn't the state governments and the center provide them some support, immediate support?
Absolutely. I think your point is valid. If you look at the recovery post-COVID, many sectors have done well. Some sectors have struggled because they've been the most impacted by wave 1, wave 2, and now wave 3. Right. So our submission to the government has also been that the MSME sector needs to get the support that it's been getting. We need to continue with that support. High contact service sectors like the ones that you described, whether it's fitness, whether it is restaurants, hotels, tourism, aviation is just about coming back, etc. So some of these sectors need support, more than other sectors. And in fact, support can be directed to these sectors because some of the sectors don't need any support. So we agree with that. Whether what is it that can be done at the center and the state needs to be discussed with the local governments. But certainly as part of our budget proposals also, we've been saying that these are sectors which specifically need some support from the government.
One of the other features of the government response to the corona pandemic and the economic recession slowdown that occurred as a result was that while it opened up the fiscal tap, where it spent quite a bit more than was originally envisaged, some people say that direct income support for the underprivileged, for the weaker sections, and for the small and perhaps micro enterprises across the country is still lacking. Do you think the forthcoming budget should keep this in mind and appropriately respond to the evolving situation?
So we had, Siddharth, we had a few suggestions to the government. One is, of course, to continue with the support through Manrega, because that has been substantial and that has been important. So one is to continue with that as much as is required to make sure that the recovery is complete, particularly in the rural sector. The second part is to say, how is it that we can spend more on creating health infrastructure? Because if you really look at household incomes at the middle class and the lower middle class and the poorer people, they've been hit by the fact that their health expenditure has been far more than they'd budgeted 2 years back or 3 years back. So there is a concern that household budgets are under stress, household balance sheets are under stress because incomes have been hit. If the family is working in some of the sectors that have been more impacted by COVID, jobs have been hit and expenses have gone up in some of these areas. So there is a concern. Those are the households that need support. At the lower levels, you have Manrega. At a more higher level, it's more about how can you secure them against such kind of unplanned for expenses in the future by great expenditure in health infrastructure, and also to create something like a pandemic pool, a pool of capital that is available to respond to any future pandemic, and that can be created over a period of time. And CII has also submitted a paper to the government on that. So I think these are all areas to be done. And the more we can do about creating jobs and stability of incomes, the better chances that we will have of consumption coming back with the momentum that it had in the past.
Why do you think the government has not been able to, for example, provide greater tax write-offs for the higher medical expenditure? I am talking of what is allowed on the personal income tax front, where there is a small amount of money that used to be deductible. Now, you yourself have mentioned that there is significant amount of medical expenditure that a lot of families have suffered. There are other issues that have come up. Do you think it's also time for the government of India, which provided a big corporate tax relief a few years back, to also do something on the personal income tax front for salaried individuals, for small business owners, for example?
Siddharth, one needs to look at it in the overall context, because if you look at it from the government's perspective, they've spent far more on vaccination than they had planned to, right, by providing it across the country. So, and now with the booster shots, etc., there are a lot of expenses the government is directly incurring, which would have otherwise been incurred by the businesses, corporates, or individuals. Right? So the government needs to see how is the money best used in the most impactful way, so that it reaches all citizens.
The other side of the argument, allow me to interrupt you, the other side of the argument would be that the government has raised substantial revenues from elevated retail prices of petrol and diesel, for example, and that has been used for the vaccine point that you made. What I am trying to understand is, for a government which a few years back provided a huge tax giveaway to corporate India, is it not time to also provide some tax relief on the direct tax front to the individual taxpayers? You have GST rates, which is a completely separate budget outside the budget now.
No, I'm not arguing against that. All I'm saying is that, one needs to look at how much of money the government needs to spend on what, and if it is first ideally spent on vaccines, and it should spend it on vaccines before it gives the tax relief, because the tax relief is also relevant only to a certain section of society, whereas vaccines are relevant to all sections of society. And I think, to be fair to the government, till 3-4 months back, they were also not clear how much will be the revenues vis-a-vis the expenditure. I think the GST collections have been great. The recovery has been strong. Tax revenues have been strong. That probably gives the finance minister more headroom to maybe pursue some of the ideas that you're suggesting. But certainly the fiscal health looks much healthier than it was maybe 6 months back.
If the fiscal health is much better than what it was a few months back, what are the other key suggestions that you have made from a boost for growth, a booster shot for the economy?
Yeah. So the first and foremost is, of course, to continue to spend on infrastructure, because that is a force multiplier in many ways. It creates a lot of economic activity across the country, because a lot of infrastructure is being built in rural areas. It creates jobs, it creates incomes for MSME sector, and it creates infrastructure which makes Indian industry more and more competitive. So I think that's an area which has multiple impacts, and we say our recommendation is please continue to spend, even as much as private sector investment is slowly coming back, but let the government continue to spend on infrastructure that it has promised to, and do it quickly and efficiently, which it's trying to do. The second part is on the consumption side, which we just discussed, is to look at how do we create more stable jobs, how do we improve the quality of jobs, how can we support labor-intensive sectors as much as capital-intensive sectors, how can we create incentives around job creation, how can we support sectors like textiles, leather, etc., which is more labor-intensive, and also electronics, which the government is anyway supporting and getting a fair amount of investment. The third part is investment, or the expenditure on education is about 3% of GDP. How can we take it to at least 4% and higher? So because once you invest on education, skills, health, etc., hopefully you're dealing at a long-term fundamental level and creating more opportunities for people to go up the economic ladder. The other suggestion is also about improving the ease of doing business, so that we can continue to get more and more private sector coming in. And the last point is to build a long-term roadmap on climate change, on technology and knowledge-intensive sectors, and also to encourage a startup ecosystem. So these, in a summary, are what we've been talking about. Some of it will have a short-term impact, and some of it will have a more long-term and medium-term impact.
Reliance Industries has raised $4 billion in the largest ever foreign currency bond issuance from India. Part of the cash will be used to refinance $1.5 billion worth of debt, which is due to mature in February. It's been the largest ever foreign currency bond issuance from India. Notes were nearly 3 times oversubscribed. The conglomerate raised $1.5 billion in a 10-year tranche, $1.75 billion in a 30-year, and $750 million in a 40-year deal. The rapid spread of COVID in the past week has hit air traffic in India. According to the latest data from the Civil Aviation Ministry, there's been a decline of 11% in air traffic in the week of 29th December to 4th of January. Sources tell Business Today TV that the Ministry of Civil Aviation is reviewing the situation closely and may also take action if the threat from COVID spreads. The ministry is in regular touch with Health Ministry and is ensuring the safety of passengers amidst the third wave. The centre is also expected to discuss certain regulations if there is an increase in the number of cases. Karishma Sudhani joining us on this. Karishma, take us through all the latest on that front.
Well, right, it looks like turbulence is hitting back for the domestic aviation sector in India, and that is because of the fallen numbers, because of the new surge in cases of Omicron variant. Going by the numbers and what the sources are hinting, it's almost a 10% drop on an average in the first week of January that is being noticed, while in the month of November and October, we were almost touching high at about 4.5 lakh of passenger movement on a daily basis, about 1 crore that was being crossed on a monthly basis. But now, and specific to that, what happened yesterday, the domestic aviation sector saw the air passenger traffic of about 2,35,000, which is quite a fall. And this is happening because, of course, the passengers are cautious of the fact that there is a rapid surge in cases across the country. This could not mean really well for the airlines who were expecting things to get better for them. In fact, I'm also learning from sources that meetings have started happening in the Ministry of Civil Aviation along with the coordination from Ministry of Health to discuss certain restrictions and rules if there is a further increase in cases. We are also expecting that the government could soon take a call on putting the utilization capacity back in a graded manner, which was actually removed in the month of October because of high passenger traffic.
All right, Karishma, thanks for joining us with that. The Gujarat government has announced that it has postponed the Vibrant Gujarat Investor Summit due to a rise in COVID-19 cases in the state. The summit was earlier slated to be held from Jan 10th to Jan 12th. It's a mega event as 26 countries, business tycoons and investors from India and abroad participate. Chetan Bhutani gets us more details on the story. Chetan, now that it's been postponed, what hangs in the balance and what does this mean given that it's usually such a signature event on the calendar for the state?
Well, absolutely, Abha. You know, this is a signature event which was started by the Chief Minister of the then Chief Minister of Gujarat, Narendra Modi. It's a biannual Vibrant Gujarat Summit that happens, and the summit of 2022 has been cancelled. Well, the Chief Minister Bhupendra Patel reviewed the situation, and the Prime Minister was himself supposed to inaugurate the summit on 10th of January. 26 countries were partner nations, and about heads of 5 states were supposed to be a part of the summit. In fact, not just nations. But global tycoons from Suzuki, Rosneft, Boeing, Lockheed Martin were supposed to be a part of the event. In Indian businesses, leaders like Mukesh Ambani, Gautam Adani, Sunil Bharti Mittal, and Chandra were supposed to be a part of this. Well, you know, Gujarat on Wednesday, in fact, reported more than 3,000 cases of COVID-19 cases and about 50 Omicron cases. Well, you know, 5 IAS officers, including those who were organizing the summit, have been diagnosed. So hence, total chaos had happened there. And when the Chief Minister took review, they officially decided to put it on hold. So when the next dates come, we'll definitely come back to the viewers regarding the same.
All right, Chetan, thanks for joining us with the latest there. Indians travelling the world will soon be carrying e-passports with them. The Ministry of External Affairs today announced that it will soon be issuing e-passports, which will be secured with biometric data. A tweet said that the e-passport will be accepted internationally and will provide a smooth passage through immigration posts globally. The new type of passports until now have been issued only to officials and Indian diplomats on a pilot basis. E-passports are embedded with a microchip which holds all vital information about the holder. They will also have security features to ensure the information in the chip is not stolen. These e-passports were to be issued from 2021 but were delayed. Here's what else is making news in the corporate world. Quick commerce player Dunzo raises $240 million in its latest round of funding. The investment was led by Reliance Retail Ventures with participation from existing investors Lightbox, Lightrock, 3L Capital and Altiria Capital. As a part of its 7th anniversary celebrations, Vistara Airlines announced special fares on its domestic and international network. For domestic, one-way All India fares start at 977 rupees for economy class. Delhi-based LiveFin India has raised $2 million in venture debt from alternative credit platform Black Soil. LiveFin provides supply chain finance to mid to large corporates by setting up programs to lend to their suppliers, vendors and distributors, dealers and retailers through an anchor-based financing model. And that's where we leave it on the show today. Thanks so much for watching.